Morning, everybody. Wanted to share a thought, which is a lesson that I learned when I went through a sabbatical coaching process, and that was probably about a year long, maybe a little more. And one thing I learned from getting to a point of near burnout and exhaustion and just depletion is encapsulated in kind of the title that I gave this little video. Um, and that is coercion or calling. I was in ministry at the time, and one thing that can be somewhat common, whether you are in vocational ministry or you're active serving in some type of leadership capacity or a very active volunteer in your church, is we can get to a point sometimes where we do things out of guilt or even out of fear rather than out of what I'm going to call calling for a moment. Now, I want to be careful how I navigate the term calling because that can mean many different things to many different people, and it can mean many different things even depending on what church context or background you find yourself in. Some people have a mystical ideal of calling that it's like resting in your true purpose, and it's almost this ethereal sweet spot that you could discover. Others kind of have a view of calling that is self-abasing, the idea that God calls you um, to basically destroy everything and sacrifice everything for the sake of doing something for Him. And there is sacrifice in our life when we're doing something worthwhile, but I want to try to balance this and navigate it, and I really want to center in on one core thought, and maybe I'll spin off on a rabbit trail into one other thing. But the core thought I want to leave with us today is this. You may have served God in a particular way. For example, I think of people who have led in their church. They might have been the leader of a small group or some type of ministry in their church for years, and then that season is over and they feel guilty, especially if somebody's not stepping into it and kind of taking back over. They feel guilty that, oh, I need to step back in. And sometimes that pressure is even applied from an outside force or person or group or even church leadership or something. And it's not ill-meaning in most cases. It's the fact that we're familiar as human beings with what we've been through, and we're familiar with what we've gone through, and what's hindsight. We're not typically anticipating the future and the unknown with a lot of confidence. And so the point that I want to make is something I learned the hard way. I learned that if the Lord leads me away from something, okay, I was doing this, I was serving this way, if He says that chapter is over, then it doesn't matter what other people want me to do. The guilt or the even self-pressure of I need to do that again, fearful that somebody else can't do it like I did it, that actually, I'm going to say a little more strongly, can be motivated and can lead to sin. If you are doing something from a place of unbiblical guilt, if you are stepping into something out of a pride in the core of who you are, that I need to do this because nobody else can do it like me, or because you don't want to give up control because of fear, if that is the core reason, then you stepping back into something that God called you to step away from and to be obedient, okay, I'm done with that, it actually is sin. And if I step into it, something that God is not wanting me to do, I continue to deplete myself. I continue to walk in disobedience to Him, which is sin. And here's a third component. I am causing indirectly someone else to sin because I'm doing what God wants them to do. I think of this in the church situations. Delegation is a great thing, and it's something that I did not learn for a long time when I was pastoring and leading. I didn't want to delegate, and there's multiple reasons for that. It could have been because I knew how to get it done, or I could get it done faster, or I didn't have anybody else to pass it off to. But sometimes the awkward silence and even the void of there's not somebody to do it is what the Lord wants. Because life is not a steady, consistent thing where nothing ever changes. However, in the midst of those changes the Lord brings and those pivots, maybe I taught this class for years in my church, and now the Lord has a different path for me. I could step back into that or be encouraged to go back into that because that's what's familiar and what people know. But if the Lord is calling me to focus on something else, that's also okay. And it's actually good, and it's actually right for me to be obedient and to step into a calling to something that, okay, I don't know what the future holds. And this is what's familiar. This is what I've done. The Lord called me to that, and I was obedient, and I did that, but now it's a new season, and I don't know what it is. I hope this is making sense. But it's okay to step into obedience of the unknown. What is not okay is trying to stay comfortable and walk in disobedience and even indirectly be encouraging others' sinful disobedience to the Lord because I'm doing something that He hasn't called me to do. One of the core reasons for burnout is people doing things with the wrong motives and for the wrong reason, and neglecting a really core thing, which is you gotta be refreshed yourself. We look at teachers, we look at we look at ministers, we look at health professionals, we look at business owners. There's certain types of work or professions or even volunteer activities, if you will, that are very common to burnout. And why? Because they're service oriented. And serving many times comes from a great root. We want to help people, we want to serve people, we want to make a difference in people's lives. But you can never be God for somebody. You can't be there 24/7 for anybody. You can't be everything that somebody else needs, ever. Only the Lord can. I'm not saying don't care. I'm not saying to not pour yourself out for others. I'm not saying don't make appropriate sacrifices. But what I am saying is only God can be God. And you need that for yourself as well. You need to refresh, and you need to be restored in His presence, and you need to feed upon His Word. You need other people around you that can encourage you and sharpen you as iron sharpens iron, to use a term from Proverbs. My point in making this short little video today is simply to say, calling is not this out there mystical thing we're following, this idea of we find our purpose in life is never going to have a difficulty again. Jesus' purpose was to go to the cross, and it was very difficult. The pressure and the immensity of what He was going to do and what He was going to go through caused Him to wrestle. We saw in the Garden of Gethsemane, he's wrestling mentally, he's wrestling in prayer, he's fighting the discouragement of the enemy, he's undergoing such physical pressure and such anxiety within his body that he is literally sweating drops of blood. His blood pressure is increasing to the point that blood vessels are bursting, and as he's sweating drops of blood. That's difficult. I'm not saying that there will never be difficulties when we obey God. What I am saying is there is no perfect path free of any resistance that the Lord is ever going to call you to. There are seasons that are really great of, so to speak, a mountaintop, or, a time where we're reaping the fruits of past labors. But life is a journey, and one thing that you can count on is that change is going to happen. But in the midst of it, what can we do? The Lord continues to come to us throughout the Bible and come to other individuals and say, fear not. We're experiencing fear. We don't know what to do. Fear wants to paralyze us and get us to make decisions to not be obedient. And the Lord is saying, trust me. Choose to fear not. Doesn't mean an absence of fear, but be courageous in the midst of it. Be strong and courageous in the Lord. Go forward with what He is asking you. Be obedient. It's that simple. Obedience is not easy, but it is relatively simple. Take the step you know the Lord has for you to take, and be okay with failing. What I mean is, it's not all going to turn out the way you think. It's not all going to be a smooth, successful, uphill, prosperous battle. But the Lord is with you, and your Father loves you, and your Father is going to provide for you. He's going to care for you. He's going to walk with you. He's going to shepherd you. And what an enormous promise in Matthew chapter 11, I believe it's verses 28 through 30, where Jesus asks us and calls us to come to Him who are weary and heavy laden by, what are those weary, heavy laden things for you? Stresses, anxieties, pressures, fears, whatever they are, you're weary and heavy laden, come to me, Jesus says. I'll give you rest, the rest you truly desire for your soul. My yoke is easy, my burden is light. He's going to yoke Himself to that wagon alongside you. And He's the stronger, more mature ox. This is what they would do in Bible times. A strong, mature, seasoned ox would be yoked to a young, green ox. And the bigger one would be pulling most of the way. And the young one's kind of trying to go faster or slower and pull against. And the older one is just more consistent and steady. It's the pulling back, because they both have the yoke around their neck. The restraining influence to mentor and guide. And then they're pulling together, and you can study what happens when synergy occurs, to use a business world term. One person can do so much. Two people individually can do more. Two people together can do exponentially more, because they're pulling in the same direction and working together. And when you're yoked to Jesus, there's nothing impossible. More than we can ask or think, we can be obedient to the Lord, and we can know He's going to accomplish His purposes. I will end with this. When I was in my last church revitalization, I was there about 3 years, and I was spent. I was going to end up going through this sabbatical process after probably about a year of serving them, and then there was just going to be life and unexpected turns I could not see. Nothing with the church. The Lord continued to show up and show off, and so many answers to prayer and amazing things. I could go down a huge list of them. We saw God do so many things in our church family. But one of the things I remember is I would go into the church before service for so long, be there before anybody else, and I would just be on my face at the altar saying, Lord, in spite of and despite me, I know You've called me here. I don't have the strength to do this. I don't even necessarily know what to do all the time. I don't know how I can do what needs to be done. But Lord, in spite of and despite me, show up and show off for Your glory. Holy Spirit, have Your way. Work amongst us as a church family. Let people have no other explanation for what's happened except You. And you know what? It was true. To this day, I even met people earlier this year. They weren't even at the church when I was, and I've not been there for over a year now, almost a year and a half, I think. And God showed up and showed off in the next pastor coming and through the whole process. And, I was at this point where, God, I'm just going to stay forever. I'm comfortable. I love what You've done. I love my church family. At the same time, I was, as I mentioned, spent and didn't know what to do. But God was showing up and showing off, and I wanted to stay in that type of a place. And God moved in my life in a way I never could have anticipated, in a direction I never would have chosen. I never would have chosen to live in the state that I live now. It's no story for another time. My point in saying that is, God can call you to obedience in something that's beyond you, that's impossible for you, and call you to a greater dependence upon Him. And He can work for His glory and your good simultaneously, empty you of your sinful self even more, and cause you to rest upon Him more. So today, I hope something from what I said can be an encouragement or something you can latch on to. For those of you friends and stuff tuning in today, where we've served together or done different things together over the years. This is what I'm trying to do now, to be able to walk with people, share some of my story, walk with them, be the support for them as they're walking into a different season for the Lord themselves. They may not know what it looks like. Do we almost ever really know what the Lord has in store in the future? But to be someone that can walk alongside and can be an encourager and can be a help and can be a cheerleader in a sense, and a resource. So I hope this has been an encouragement to you. God bless you all, and look forward to connecting hopefully with many of you again pretty soon. God bless.